My name is Greg Guimond. I am the town planner. At the table, Josh from MAPC, Michael Moresco, the town administrator, Andrew, the building commissioner, Karen, the assistant planner, and more recently, housing coordinator position. Tonight, we were going to talk, it's our wrap-up session for public input on the economic development plan. Josh from MAPC has been working with us on this project for several months now. We've had surveys, we've had multiple meetings, but tonight we were going to talk about the B1 district, the industrial district, the PMUD district, which is the planned mixed-use development district, and the B2 north of 139 from Furnace Brook, Proprietors Drive, Signal, all the way to the town line. We also will be talking about a big part of this discussion, unfortunately, will also be on MBTA communities, which is a change to the state law, which is Chapter 40A, Section 3A. So you guys know ahead of time, I have 29 slides. So I got to get through the 29 slides in the 2 hours. We should be able to do that. And we have fewer people than we did at the last meeting, so we did not go with the time clock this time. Mr. Moresco will kind of keep an eye on the clock. 2 minutes is fine. If you're going towards 5 minutes, we're going to ask you to wrap it up. It's not to limit you, but it's to make sure everybody else has a chance to either ask questions, make comments, or give us suggestions. It's okay to say that you don't like that idea, or you like an idea, but please try to give us a little more feedback than that. So some of our survey results, people said fix zoning. That doesn't help us because we don't know what you want us to do with the zoning. And zoning is something that works in the future because you have to go to town meeting. There's grandfathering rights and stuff involved. So not everything gets changed automatically overnight. And that's the difference from the town's general bylaw. You can pass a general bylaw and that takes effect immediately. Zoning bylaws, it's a little more complicated. Final comment on the opening, please be respectful of other people's opinions. All right, on the B2 Industrial District and PMUD, good news, we don't have any floodplain concerns, which is unlike almost all our other commercial districts where we have a lot of floodplain concerns. So historically, the selectmen and the planning board have been very reluctant to put residential housing in the industrial district. Our B2, back in 1969 to roughly 1971, allowed apartments by right, or through a special permit. I think it was more like by right. We had about 700 apartment buildings, units built in that couple-year time frame, and then the town meeting got rid of the apartment bylaw. Concerns, we have a water resource protection district, which is the pink, which you can barely see, on the northern part. So almost all the B2 is in the water resource protection district. A part of the PMUD is, and a couple of pieces of the industrial. We have more wetlands than are shown on our map, and the topography is tough, particularly in the PMUD, over here at Commerce Drive and Proprietors as you're coming up the hill past the Boys and Girls Club, and then along the back side or south side of Commerce Way. Left-hand turns, curb cuts along 139, the 2 signalized intersections are also concerns. We have a limited capacity on the traffic traffic flow and impacts. We understand that. On the B1, the good news, we don't have to worry about the Water Resource Protection District because the 2 former wells have been closed down for quite a while. And from what DPW says, they're not going to open up again. We have strong bike and ped connections, or pedestrian connections, from CVS north along the bridle path and rail trail. On the concern side, wetlands are much more extensive, again, than shown on the map. Floodplain, especially on the Library Plaza side, so this is Webster Street here, this is 139 here, Town Hall's over here. There are a number of small lots, which again make things difficult. And again, we have traffic and pedestrian concerns, particularly at the Snow Road Webster Street intersection, which is how you get across over to the library. We have a lot of people that use that as a cut through in the mornings because the Dunkin' Donuts and the Webster Street light gets kind of backed up. So some of the things on our side we were looking at and we wanted input from was considering adding some additional uses, commercial uses to the industrial district. So in the past we've had comments, why don't you mirror the B2 on the south side, get rid of a big portion of the industrial district and make it B2 commercial. Part of the problem with that is, if you remember years ago we had to pass the adult entertainment bylaw, and we also had to pass the marijuana bylaws, and we put those uses in the industrial district. And we don't have a lot of industrial land left. We have not been, we have not had somebody come in with an adult entertainment business, but we have to show that we have space available. So the planning board has been traditionally against rezoning the south side into B2. But perhaps we could add some more commercial uses to that district, the industrial district. Also, are there other uses that we have not thought of? Remember, the table of use was created in the 60s. Some of these things did not exist. Marijuana facilities did not exist. Microbreweries did not exist. Self-storage, whoever thought that was a big thing, which will be going to town meeting, and we will be addressing that at this spring town meeting, but there may be other uses that we have not thought of or have not hit us yet, that if you think, hey, look into this, that will be helpful. Another thing to talk about is considering changes to the affordable village. So a few years ago, we passed, a year and a half ago, we passed the affordable village, which is townhouses that are not age restricted on the south side of Commerce. After negotiations between the residents in that area, the property owner, and several potential builders. And we thought we had a density that would work at 3 units per acre, etc. We got it to town meeting, everything was hunky-dory, but we have not seen any development there. Why that's important is, first you had Modera, now we have Mill Creek. There is one more big chunk of land in between Highland, the Highland Green, the Seasons, and the houses on the subdivision up on Old Woodlot Lane and Seth Sprague Drive. So that's something to think about. And do you guys think we should be looking at possibly upping that density a little, hold firm, or have other discussions with the property owner? If people want to have discussions with the property owner, on the planning staff side, we will get a meeting that's just specifically on that. If you guys want to have a sit down and say, hey, what's going on? Why hasn't the townhouses that we expected at the density that we expected happen? Again, are there other uses that we haven't thought of that should be in the PMUD, which is the planned mixed use development? Consider changing the B1 boundary line. So I'm going to go back for a second. This funny little tail that runs down past Parsonage Street. So here's Parsonage Street. This little tail is much different than the rest of B1, which is pretty much 2 big plazas and then some commercial stores and stuff in front. You got some builder, contractor type buildings. You have some single family homes. You have some affordable housing. It does not feel the rest of it. So should we think about changing that district? What should we change it to? Should we go residential, or should we come up with some other kind of lower density? Because B1 is one of the highest densities that we have. And then again, are there other things in the table of use that we haven't thought of for B1? So at this point, I'm going to stop on the questions about zoning. Any questions on that? Eric?
Yeah, a couple of questions.
Okay.
We were talking about the wells on Parsons Street.
Yep.
So you said, if I heard correctly, you mentioned that the DPW was not going to be putting those to use?
They have not been used in quite a while, and from what I've been told by the DPW, they have no intention of using them. So right now, they are not shown in our water resource protection zoning layer on the zoning map.
I understand that. Is there a reason why they're not going to be using them?
That is up to the DPW to discuss. I don't want to say something I don't know is true.
I thought you just said that they weren't going to be using them.
I have had multiple conversations with them, and they said they are not intending to use those funds.
No reason to say it though.
No reason to say it.
Bring up Mill Creek. Mill Creek is not a definite at the moment.
Mill Creek is what? Not built yet, yes, it is.
It's in a legal matter right now. And we're talking about density and then have owner discussions in regards to the area up at Commerce
Way, yep.
So the whole thing is that one thing is Mill Creek is a high density development that I think everybody in this room is aware of and knows that there's challenges to it right now.
It is the highest density that we will have in the town.
Maybe.
At 24 units per acre. Roughly, yeah, I think it actually was 22 because they did drop a little from the 300 to 270.
If it gets built. The only is that you're asking the residents here if the town should do something. We got a discussion with the landowner. So the whole thing is that in regards to Mill Creek and the other parcel that's still open, maybe we should be having a discussion with the landowner in regards to selling the land to the town and keeping open space. Mill Creek, that can still happen because it's being the contract. The landowner can pull out of that and that would take care of that. So I don't know why, especially when the town knows that a lot of the residents up there, and throughout the town I'm sure, are not happy with that development in the first place in regards to density and size. And where it's located in its water resource district, which is totally insane, I think.
Actually, I believe it is outside of the WRPD.
Isn't that in the pink there? What I'm assuming? Did you say that was the water resource district?
Here's water resource for Union, 2 Union Street wells. And here's the water resource protection district for 4 Furnace Brook wells. And here's the WRPD over here. Mill Creek is right there. It is in the PMUD. It is not in the water resource protection.
What's up with, there's an SARPD right there, and the guys know that?
For this, down. But you have wells and Parsonage Street.
All right, so that established it because the Mill Creek is gonna be over 50,000 gallons of.
Hatching, you can't see the hatching, I think that's what.
All right.
Hold on, I'm not done. So Mill Creek's gonna be disposing of roughly 35,000 to 50,000 gallons of waste in that area.
The map behind you doesn't show the water resource protection district. This is it, in the WRPD. Yes, that's
All
right.
right, all right, I can see, show them right up there. And then in regards to the B1 on Parsonage, and it looks like Webster was showing there, there should be no change there. As you said, it's a highly traveled area as it is right now, so making any changes is only there in regards to adding, what do you want to call it, housing and business there would be a bad setback for that whole area as well as the town.
So we've already passed residential above commercial in the B1 district. We're not talking about doing something like that. That's already been approved.
So what are you asking?
We're just saying, should this be something else besides B1? And I heard you about the comments about the traffic and stuff.
What is the, all right, so what is
So another
What is it?
example is
What-
along the corridor from 139 by the police station,
Yep.
heading towards the old drive-in theater. That was B2, it's a commercial highway. Years ago, we changed it to residential business, which is a lower density, lower uses. You can't have drive-in restaurants, et cetera, in that area.
So you're asking the residents, people here, and as well as those that maybe watch this later, what should we change that B1 to, if there's any thoughts? So I'm thinking, why is you or the town asking us like that? So what does the town have in thoughts in regards to what they want to do?
On the planning staff, we were like, this is not the same as the other. But again, we're trying to get public feedback. Should we be looking at changing this, leave it alone, or make it something less dense? So, I mean, those are kind of choices that you have. You don't have to have the immediate answer tonight. You can get back to us later. Like I said, zoning takes time, and it also takes time to get into effect. Meaning, you gotta go to town meeting, it's gotta go to the Attorney General, and it only goes forward from there.
I'll end it right there, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on the rough zoning ideas for the two areas that we're talking about? Thank you.
Hi, I like this idea of the town buying that piece of property.
Buying which? On Commerce,
Yes.
Mill Creek, or the parcel that has yet to be developed?
Well, didn't you say both? I guess both. I don't know if the town is interested in buying them or could. But I'll.
Financially, I don't know. I've been told that things are tight until 2028 as far as the town doing things.
I mean, all I've heard from residents is that they don't want that area developed at all.
I don't know if because based on our past work on the affordable village, it wasn't that they didn't want anything at all. They would like something much less dense than 24 units per acre, which is why they had originally agreed to the 3-unit per acre townhouse development. So I don't think it's all or nothing. I think they're concerned about the density, but time has changed. New residents may have moved in from the last time. I know there's still a few of you that I've talked to multiple times in the past. That's what we're trying to gauge. What is the thought of the people living up? Keep going the wrong way. So here's Commerce Way. Here's the subdivision. Seasons is here. Highland Green is here. The area that we rezoned to Affordable Village is the first section of Commerce Way once you get past where that daycare is going, or childcare is going, and that school. It's that section before you get to where Mill Creek was proposed. It's about 8 lots, maybe 6 lots. And there are a couple of acres each. So that area is one of the areas that we thought we had dealt with. Like I said, we had talked to the property owner, we had talked to several prospective developers, we had talked it through with the residents, and they had all agreed, yes, we can support 3 units per acre. And then nothing has happened since. That, from what I've gotten from feedback from people in that area, is they're nervous that we're gonna get hit with another 40B right next door, and then we would have 3 40Bs and probably 700 units all on Commerce Drive. And that's, to me, their prime concern. So, yes?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we agreed to the 3 units per acre because we thought that it was going to cover, we never expected phase 2 of the 40B coming towards us again. So, you know, the fact that it is a second phase and that there is still more land there does make us concerned. If there's a way that we take this to town meeting and get a special approval for a one-time, purchase of this land, then that's what, we would be.
Again, which land? The vacant parcel
Well,
in between?
The vacant one right now, the Affordable Village, has nothing
On it.
hanging over it
Right.
at this point in time. So if we go and at least preserve that much, we still have some woods protected in that area, connects to the conservation land that is behind it.
You have a lot of conservation land behind it,
Right.
immediately behind it, yep.
Right, and, it makes more sense to give a little, my understanding is that this is one of the biggest forests in the Marshfield, or was one of the biggest forests in Marshfield, I could be wrong. But it'll be no forest when they finish.
There would be a lot less forest, yes. And so that's the kind of feedback that we were looking for, is this is what I think. Thank you, Art, thank you, Maureen. Again, sometimes I go home in the middle of the night or the next day when I'm driving to work or whatever, all of a sudden this idea hits me. It's like, why didn't we think of that? So don't be afraid of, hold on, Jerry, getting back to us later with ideas. Like I said, we have a little time on this. We thought we had addressed it. It hasn't come to fruition yet. We need to do a little digging to see why. Jeremy.
Jeremy Devaney, Maryland Street. Curious, it's a great question about the housing density. Was wondering if you could share a little bit. I know the town's been doing a lot of work on housing planning. We've got to get to 10%, otherwise we're going to keep taking 40Bs and we're going to take them in ways that we don't like them, rather than having a plan in hand. Where's our housing plan stand at this point? How are we going to get to that 10% threshold? Where do we stand with regard to 3A in the new regulations coming
Well, we
down?
haven't even got to 3A.
Cool.
That's going to be the rest of the 29 slides. Where are we on? We are at about 8.6% currently. With Mill Creek, it actually goes a little higher. But remember, every 10 years when the US Census releases its housing data, we fall back because more new housing has been built in town.
Right.
So my guesstimate, when all is said and done, and if Mill Creek is built, we would still be around 8.6, maybe 8.8, because of the new housing units that were also built in that last 10 years. The housing production plan has one more year before we have to have it redone. Every 5 years they want us to redo it. The housing, how you address 40B, unless you get land calculation, or GLAM, unless you get that is a one and done. If we keep going at trying to just get to the 10%, we will probably get there and then fall back out after the next census, after the next census, after the next census.
Do you have
It's this revolving door that it is not something that you get there and then it's done.
Are we anywhere close on the fixed measure? If we're at 8.6 on the housing stock,
I believe we're supposed to have 1.5%, and I think we're at 1.1% on the land area calculation. So, if we were to buy more open space, that would help, because that gets subtracted in that calculation. You had one other question, I thought. Nope, okay. Yes,
How
and then
does,
I'll get to you, Eric.
how does the new MBTA,
That
Housing.
changes a lot of things, let me get
yeah,
to
but
that.
that's already there by law. How does that figure into what we're trying to do with whatever it is, Modera?
I think once I get that fully explained, that may help give you guys the whole picture.
Okay, but
Right.
is the town of Marshfield, I know Middleborough is fighting it, even though they're gonna have a commuter rail station in the town? Is the town of Marshfield thinking about fighting this, or are they just gonna lay down?
So we have not filed the latest requirement. And
Yes.
again, I have a slide on that, so let me cover that on the MBTA section. Aaron?
Mr. Guimont, thank you. In regards to the comments in regards to our 10%, I would agree with your comments there. I'm glad you added in the 1.5% land requirement, because that seems to be the biggest overlooked piece of it all. I know during the ZBA meeting, in regards to Mill Creek, I asked, when you were there, I asked if we were at the 1.5%. You says, technically, yes, we are, but the town won't let us count the marshland that we have, if I'm correct. So it's my understanding we are at the 1.5.
We are not at the 1.5. What is it's something we're not allowed to count. What was it? Wetlands, yeah. Because we do not have a state-recognized wetland district. We have an inland and coastal wetland districts on our zoning maps, but they are not recognized by the state.
Well, my next question is going to be, because we have laws and then we have regulations. So is that a law or is that a regulation that was created by a bureaucratic entity?
So, put it this way. Typically, the law is a lot less than either the regulations or the guidelines. Again, I will get into that in a few minutes. All right, getting a sense we should get into the MBTA communities, so that might help people. Did you have a question? No. All right. So as somebody has already said, the state has created an MBTA communities requirement. They call it Section 3A. These are considered, the colored in are considered the MBTA communities. It was a designation by the state, not for this particular law, but to help finance the MBTA. Over here, here's Marshfield. That lightest color, we are considered an MBTA adjacent community. Meaning we do not have commuter rail, we do not have a ferry, and we do not have a bus terminal. We do not have direct connections to Boston. This is the state law. That's it. Here's kind of the breakdown of said state law. We're all supposed to have a zoning ordinance or bylaw that provides at least one district of a reasonable size. Now, the word reasonable, we'll let you determine that. In which multifamily housing is permitted as of right. The minimum gross density is 15 units per acre, and it shall not be located not more than a half mile from a commuter rail station, subway station, ferry terminal, or bus station. We can't have age-restricted units counting on that. It has to be suitable for children. And this last comment was from my first presentation to the selectmen a while ago. They have listened to some of the feedback. They have changed it so you can have up to 10% of the units be affordable. The initial draft of this requirements, it was not to cover affordable housing. There are 3 discretionary grants. So if you do not follow this law currently, Housing Choice Grant Fund, Local Capital Fund, Mass Works programs. Those are the 3 grants that the community who is not in compliance can apply for. That may change, but at the moment, those are the 3 grants that you cannot apply for. Here's their guidelines. As I said, they have various different things, rapid transit, so the red line communities, bus service communities, commuter rail communities like Situate, 15%. Adjacent, they want 10% of our housing stock, 10%, multifamily. Go into your tables, here's Marshfield. They want 1,158 units of multifamily housing created in the town of Marshfield. What we've done to date, as I mentioned before, we had already met with residents, developers, potential property owners, potential developers, etc., and did a number of zoning changes already a couple of years ago at town meeting, or a year and a half ago. We created that affordable district. We removed the cap on 40B units from the PMUD. We clarified and added definitions on the mixed-use development to allow residential above commercial in the PMUD at 6 units per acre. We allowed residential above commercial in the downtown at 10 units per acre. We modified the Grant Rock Village to give a full third story to get that 13 units per acre. And we also removed the 3-year waiting period on the accessory apartments. We did file in 2022 the comments on the proposed guidelines to the state. And in 2023, at this town meeting, the planning board has an article to remove the special permit requirement on the accessory apartments and make it by right through the building commissioner. We did not meet the January 31st, 2023 deadline because I was the person charged with filling out the form. I was filling out the form, and when they got to the point where they asked us to identify the zones, it did say optional in parentheses, but they wanted us to identify the zones, and then they wanted us to say, we are going to do this, this, and this, and I was supposed to sign off on it. I did not feel comfortable because we really haven't had a discussion on where we would locate this district. I gave my nervousness or my uncomfortableness to the town administrator and our select board, and they agreed, and we did not file. So we will not be eligible for those 3 grant programs this upcoming year. We understood that, but we wanted to get some public discussion going, get some feedback going, because this is not going to be an easy choice. We have to have zoning changes that adopt the multifamily districts that meets all their requirements, which is probably about 20 pages, by December of 2024. This is their flow chart. So that's the process that they want us to follow. And then we submit it to them, and they may not agree. They could say, hey, you didn't do this right, or whatever. We are at this stage right now. The planning staff did our first initial cut. We could not come up with something, so we're going to continue testing. This is right out of their compliance. Some of these other things that I've cut out are under their compliance.
Greg, real quick, there was a slide a second ago with the grant programs on it. Currently, how much is the town drawing out of those 3 grant programs?
We have not applied for any of those grants in recent history, and we did not have something that we were applying for.
If you think
under one of those grants, there is money that is provided to housing authorities. I was told in a phone call from a DHCD official that the DHCD is considering taking 10% of money from housing authorities, local housing authorities, if the town is not in compliance. So that is the only thing that we know. The housing authority is not directly with the town of Marshfield. And it's kind of sad that they're picking on the people who need it the most to try to do something about housing. But that's another story. So again, to show you, and please, by all means, there is a lot of information about MBTA communities that you can look up. Look into this. Give your reps, your senator, our governor, and everybody else you can think of, your thoughts on this. We are not a commuter rail station. We don't have a bus station. We don't have a ferry terminal. Their definition of housing suitable for families has nothing about parks, playgrounds, open space, connectivity. I would think if we really want housing suitable for children, we would address those things. This is the excluded lands, so doing their calculations, here are the things that we can cut out. The map, that's what we did. We cut out all the excluded lands. This is the sensitive lands that they allow you to cut out. We did it, it's on the map. This is right out of their guidelines again. This gives us very little flexibility. They're looking for 50 acres contiguous area of 50 acres at a minimum. We have to provide about roughly 77. Our thoughts on the planning side is if we were to put in some buffer requirements, some open space requirements, or some parking requirements, we're probably looking at about 100 acres that we have to rezone. You take out those excluded lands, you take out those, and that's the map. And that white areas are what's available. And you can see the white areas on the map in the back, and I'll have it up on the front. Again, right out of their book, their guidelines, they're saying, don't give us partial lots. I understand that. When I went to planning school, we always tried to stay within the lines. The town's existing map, unfortunately, has a lot of districts that cross multiple property lines. You get partials all over the place. An important part, the state does allow the communities to include land that's already developed. So hypothetically, we could go to a subdivision and rezone that subdivision, especially if it was over 50 acres, and say, here's our MBTA community district. I don't think that subdivision would be very happy with us. Again, this is out of the book. Here's following their guidelines. When you remove those things and you look at the area, see the white? You got a lot of stuff going on, and they say, you know what? It might be advisable to either modify that district or get a different location. So, as I said, we've done our own mapping on this. We show the Gatra route, which, start over here. Comes in through Duxbury, drives along 139, goes up to the senior center, comes back down, goes over to the general store in Green Harbor, goes over towards Brant Rock by the Brant Rock Market, comes along 139 all the way through the downtown, well, not all the way through the downtown, to Library Plaza, then goes in on Snow Road, pops back out by the town hall, goes up to 3A, follows 3A up a ways, comes back down, goes out to Furnace Street, and heads out to Pembroke. It stops at Pembroke. Here it goes all the way down to Kingston to the MBTA station. I had somebody tell me, well, you have a connection to the T station in Kingston. It literally takes 48 minutes, depending on where you get on the bus, to get to that Kingston station, which is south of you. To then take a commuter rail an hour north doesn't make sense. It's not a true connection. So that's the MBTA route. We put on all the layers that they said to put on, and you can see there's not a lot of white. Starting at the Marshfield, at the Duxbury line, we went around, and they also want us to look at commercial areas and villages because we're an adjacent community. So Green Harbor, no. Brant Rock, no. Wrexham area, no. We get into the downtown. Oh, sorry, I got ahead of myself. Planning staff on the process was follow the existing Gatra route through the town because it is our transit connection. Check the village centers, check the commercial and industrial zones, avoid excluded lands, try to avoid the sensitive areas. On our side, try not to overload one area of town and try to improve existing land uses where possible. And what I mean by that is we have a water resource protection district. We have some uses that are grandfathered in that district that really shouldn't be there because of the activities going on. Maybe one of the things we consider or look at is, does it make sense to rezone those type of things to allow those commercial uses to move somewhere else and to put in the higher density with the proper septic systems, Title V systems, or denitrifying systems. That is something on your side to think about. Again, I don't need an answer right away. Here's a blow up of the downtown. All the different colors is stuff that's excluded. And you can see, we got a little bit of area where the Star Market is. Library Plaza, unfortunately, there's not really anything to put on because it is nowhere near the minimum 50 acres in size. We do, as you go out to B2, this is Mariners Hill, this is Pudding Hill. The lights, 3A goes north, 139 goes west. Here's the lights, Town Hall's here. This goes down to Duxbury,
So
3A.
B1 is Marshall.
Yes.
Greg, what's the rough
Snow
scale?
Road to,
Snow Road is
Ocean.
right over there.
right there. So that backs up and Pleasant Street is the green zone
Pleasant
coming in the
Street?
back here. Pleasant Street would be in the back zone.
Pleasant Street's way up.
Marshfield Hills.
Marshfield Hills.
I'm looking, no. No, Pleasant.
Greg, what's the rough scale?
Parsons.
Parsons Street.
Yeah.
What's the rough scale?
Like, what's 50 acres look like on that
Going
map?
through with the river coming through and all that.
The rivers, this is the South River
Yeah,
here.
That's Parsons.
This is CVS here.
Yeah.
Parsons Street is over here. This is the old DPW barn, the police station and stuff, is that green area. Jeremy, what was the question?
Rough scale, what's 50 acres look like on that map?
Yeah. you
Hold on one
gotta
second.
flip the map. You gotta flip the
B1
map.
is 116 acres.
The whole B1 is 116 acres.
Thank you.
Yeah, you gotta show exactly what the existing area is.
All right, so on the planning side, the best we could come up with,
Could identify them. What-
here's Town Hall,
What is on,
all right, over here. This is 3A.
yeah,
Star Market, Marshalls are over here.
identify them.
Like that.
I know,
All right.
but you should identify them on a map before you have a meeting like this.
Okay, good point.
I've been through
B2,
I
this
live right
is,
here and I've lived through this hellhole that's gone through here.
this is Walgreens, this is Taylor Lumber,
Yeah,
this is Mariners Hill.
yeah.
This is 43 acres, Jeremy, okay? Again, not the 50 acres, but that's the best in the downtown area that we were like, okay, maybe possibly.
Thank you.
All right, now we're gonna pop over to the industrial area. Again, here's your Gatcher route. This is Furnace Street. This other little thing is with the last 40B, Mill Creek, one of the things we got was money to fund a change in the Gatcher route to go down Enterprise Drive, down Commerce Way, and up Proprietors Way. So the bus, instead of driving along 139 in front of DJ's or Luchetti's or anything, will come in and come around because we have 240 units, 270 units right there. And we have housing over here, we have a Boys and Girls Club here, we got a supermarket here. It made sense. But that change in the Gatcher route cost us $40,000 a year. That's what that cost for that kind of change. So understand, and I have been the town's Gatcher rep 9 years now. And I have been pushing Gatcher for route changes and to look into things and stuff. And it took quite a while to get them to look at it. On this one, again, trying to avoid all the sensitive things, what we looked at was on the north side of 139, the B2 is that blue line. And again, you can see it does not address all the property lines. The property lines go in and out. This is the Granite people right here. The high school's right here. Then you got DJ Sullivan, Luchetti's and stuff. You come along, you have the apartments in the back. You have Starbucks. You come out, here's School Street here. What we were looking at was potentially this could be another area. That would be roughly, if we followed this orange outline, that's 105 acres. The majority of it is already developed. A large part of that, roughly 650 or more, is condos or former apartments that were built in that 1969 through 71, but we also have a lot of businesses in here. We do have, it is in the flood, not in the flood zone, sorry, it is in the Water Resource Protection District. Again, this is first brush, which is why we then reported to the town administrator and the select board. We don't have an area that we figure this is the best we could come up with that in the district. I've already said that first statement. The compliance model basically says if you come to the point where you can't come up with something that works, try again. Planning staff is going to go back and we're going to use their full compliance model. They had released the compliance model in November. So it is fairly new. It is complicated. We will figure it out. We will do it again and we'll see what we come up with. However, on our side, meaning the residents of the town, we need to start having a discussion about this law and about how we think we're going to address it. I think this is the last one. So, my thoughts to the state are make your guidelines less prescriptive. Telling us in your presentations, we're not telling you you have to build 1,158 units. You just have to zone it. That doesn't sit well when you put the rubber to the road and you go to town meeting. Adjacent communities should not have the same contiguous requirements as communities with stations. I understand if you're a half mile from a train station, trying to get as much of that area within that half mile makes sense. But when you don't have that half mile, why have that contiguous requirement? It makes it extremely difficult on our side. Smaller developments possibly spread out through the community may work better for all parties. Develop standards that would produce true housing suitable for families, i.e. playgrounds, open space, dog walks, connectivity, transit connections. Have a goal of 10 or 15% of the community's housing stock to be multifamily. That's fine. We're already close to 18%. People don't realize Marshfield has a lot of multifamily attached housing already. I hear a lot, well, a lot of communities don't even have 10%. That is not the case here. And then remove the mandatory by right guidelines because the special permit process allows the community site-specific to address site-specific concerns. When we have a parcel that has sensitive issues, we should be able to address those sensitive issues through the process. And also, the final note on this one is, it is really hard to write a zoning bylaw for every property in the town or within this district and get everything right. We don't know all the site specifics, all the issues for each individual lot. And it really puts an onus on the town side to come up with a less than perfect answer. I think that's it. Yeah, all right. So, I'm sorry, I talked for a while.
I'm confused, but that's, I'm confused.
I don't blame you.
If you were to take, for instance, take the apartment units that on Chetty's side of 139, that area there, and you said, here you go, your MBTA, whatever.
Yes.
What does that do for them? I mean, does that give them free MBTA passes?
No.
So, I mean, what it
What it does, it puts the town in compliance with this law.
But
Potentially.
So you could say, we're MBTA, whatever they call it.
We did not identify
But what-
That area.
What does that do, first of all, for the MBTA, and what does that do for the town? Because I drive to work, and the MBTA is nowhere near us. And is the MBTA gonna give the town more money because of the district? I don't understand the,
Our money actually doesn't go to the MBTA. Years ago, we went and we switched our money to GATRA.
okay, but I don't see how this is helping the MBTA. Doesn't make any
On the
sense to my
state side, they're looking at it as they need to produce housing units. They want attached multifamily housing units. That is their goal.
I mean,
Because
if
there is a
people have
housing
it-
crisis,
if-
and by having more units, hopefully the prices would go down. This MBTA communities isn't specifically written to help affordable housing. In fact, it could hurt the town, because if we, in the next 2 or 3 years, come up with 1,158 units, the next census comes along, we're 1,158 units further in the hole. Which is why we commented in the beginning, this doesn't help us, this hurts us. And they did allow communities to put in, you can say 10% of the units. I'm not the best spokesperson for the state. I think if you look at the stuff online, you can kind of get an idea of where the state's coming from. Since they allow you to put it on top of existing development, and because this area is a water resource protection district, and we got some uses in there that really shouldn't be in there, this may be an opportunity to get those businesses to move potentially in the industrial district that's outside of the water resource protection district and get new development that would meet our Title V and issues and not have chemicals, paints, solvents, and all this other stuff that we don't need them in the wells again, frankly. Yes?
Can I just ask, is there any reason we're only looking at these areas? I know that the town owns land up on Union Street. There seems to be a lot of land, some street, Pleasant Street, that Marshfield Hills area, but it doesn't seem that that's even in the.
So Marshfield Hills, again, you zoom in on Marshfield Hills, you remove the excluded lands and you remove the sensitive lands, there isn't any area. So our first blush was, where can we fit, right? That doesn't work, and it's also not on the transit route. If we had smaller sizes, now they do allow, if you find a 50-acre site, a contiguous area, or whatever, you then could have several other 5-acre or more sites somewhere else to get to the 77 that they're looking for.
So am I incorrect by saying that the school department or the town had bought area of land on Union Street in case they needed to put another school?
There is a town piece of land up there, 20 acres for a school site. I think it is like right in there. Oh, no, actually, it's right here because I remember these are the Cullen subdivision. That's the site in there. We were not looking at town land as part of this initial thing. We were following strictly their guidelines.
It's only supposed to be town land specifically designated as developable, and I think that land is specifically
Set aside for
designated
a school,
And it's also not that big.
20 acres. Another thing to remember is a lot of the open space, and you got a lot of open space here, 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 up there, over here, all of that has conservation restrictions on it. So you can't develop those. We don't have a lot of land, developable land, easy, especially developable land left. That, what's left of it, is kind of in that area. Because it had been set aside as an industrial zoned area. And And over time, the industry, which I think in the 60s they were thinking of, really didn't come. And especially after the Boston Whaler facility tried to locate in Marshfield, and Marshfield said, no, thank you. That kind of, we don't have a sewer line out there, we do have town water. That kind of said to businesses, yeah, if you're a heavy industry and stuff, go elsewhere. We have had other uses come in and stuff, but it's not, I think, what the original vision was. But on the selectmen side and the finance side of town, having all that just become residential housing doesn't help us either. Because on the residential side, police, fire calls, schools, etc. Businesses side is supposedly cheaper for us. Sir?
So we put all this back on Rocco Longo? Because that creek that runs behind here does not roll anymore. And now we have wetlands on the backside, which we never had wetlands over here. When the senior center got put up here, now we pond over there and we don't pond there. All our drainage out of here goes that way. And it doesn't go back that way, back to the creek.
Well, there was the wooden bridge over to
Am I
Dan
right
Webster.
or wrong?
I would
I
agree
bought
that
my house
this is
in
dry because when I
1999.
walk over here,
And I
it
went
is
to
no creek.
camp there in 1980, and that river always flowed until this place got stamped in.
It wasn't a
2001.
river, but
Yeah, it was a river, it was a creek. Now the creek is going down back here.
which is where we as Boy Scouts used to camp.
No, that's where the wetland is now.
Like,
There's more water there than there. And that's all coming off of Black Mountain.
Mike,
So
Great.
water doesn't flow uphill. You, with the drainage you've done on this whole lot was wrong.
I am not the person who did
Well,
that.
the
so.
engineer should have got it right.
All right, Mike,
Does it have to be a bus station in the 50 acres or connectivity to the commuter rail? How does that work?
we're an adjacent community, which means we don't have those things.
Right.
So,
But to become a community, an MBTA community, do you have to have that?
no,
No.
no. MBTA communities were designated by the state law when they were funding the MBTA. Years ago, when the MBTA needed more money, they expanded the area for people that had to pay into the MBTA.
I see.
Ma'am?
When was that reference right that you just mentioned, when the state defined the MBTA community guidelines, when was that?
The MBTA communities guideline was 2019 at the end of the legislative year. MBTA communities had been designated probably originally in the 50s, again in the 60s, again in the 70s, and that kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger because they kept trying to get more money. Now that may not be fair to the MBTA, so that's just my opinion. All right, we got multiple hands.
So my question is, my name is Brian Leese. I was on the South Shore Chamber Board when this came up, as far as a lot of towns obviously implemented this, Weymouth being one of them. The issue that we're finding is that they have no problem getting housing up top. It's getting the commercial down below. So you have a lot of buildings that are sitting there empty. You go up to the air base, right there is exactly, and people, you know, it's great for a developer to look at this because it is a great opportunity, but the issue is you have this brand new building sitting there and you can't fill the commercial part, which the town likes the commercial part. So it's kind of a tricky issue with them coming to a community, a smaller community, saying here, like Weymouth, they've implemented it down the landing, the air base, different towns, Braintree's doing it, but they're more commuter friendly, if you want to say, because the commuter rails, the buses, or everything's there. We're here, I just think it's kind of a tricky thing to do, especially how tight our town is in the area of like the downtown, if you want to say. So I think for a developer to look at it that way, obviously if they're going to buy it, they want to be able to rent down there. And right now, commercial is really tough. There's a lot of open spaces for commercial in Marshfield right now.
Well, and also think about it, now we're hopefully past COVID, et cetera. That took a big hit. Bricks and mortar stores, you know, took a huge hit. We have been fortunate in the 2 mixed-use buildings down by Roach Brothers, but they're dentist offices and stuff. There is a limited, and we agree, which is why on our bylaw we said only half of the space on the first floor has to be retail. And the back half can be parking, garage parking, storage, et cetera, for the units above to help with that. So I'm in agreement, it is a difficult, it can't be everywhere. There's a limited
Even on
market.
Snow Road, they have 5 spaces available right now, Brixmor, as far as empty commercial spaces. We were one of them, we moved out and bought a building on Ocean Street. But there's 5 empty right now, and they've been trying to rent those forever. So I just worry about more commercial coming into town and seeing it as you drive. Weymouth, you know, on Bridge Street in Weymouth, I know it's a whole different area, but that goes right to Quincy there. There was so much space open for commercial, they had to change their bylaws too. So, just my opinion.
Did you have a comment, ma'am? Okay.
I also just so discouraged with the fact that as much as the state's pushing more on housing, I mean, the road can't take the amount of, 1995 is when they had made the 4 lanes up by Roach Brothers. That was gonna, now what, 28 years ago, 29 years? And the more housing, I mean, if you go down to the center now, down 139, you're backed up all the way to the old Twin Brooks. Our roads aren't large enough to take the amount of people that they want to afford. I mean, it's not affordable, just housing in general.
So when 139 got to 4 lanes, I was still on the planning board. Our town officials invited the then governor to Enterprise Drive. He couldn't get out. And that's how we were able to get funds to get the 139 improvements. But the state was very clear to us back then, this is it. You're on your own. You guys manage the traffic. So to this day, I remember that's what we were told. Traffic, and I tried to mention that in the beginning, traffic is a concern. That's why we've tried to focus the 2 signalized intersections. And at one time, we were hoping to have, and School Street is coming along, that's going to be signalized as well. But originally, we were hoping to have a second road running back, the backside, to connect over to Enterprise Drive. Right about where Commerce was, we were going to have, so you could have gone from Highland Green on that back road and come out at School Street at a set of lights and then go out of town to help with that traffic flow. Unfortunately, we had a couple of wetland issues in between, and we had multiple property owners who didn't get together and decide to, you know, think long range. They just keep chopping up stuff. We probably don't have that ability to make that secondary road. That would have helped with the traffic. Ma'am?
If the businesses on 139, are those privately owned? And the
Yes.
business owners own the land as well. So how would
Yes.
the town go about possessing or buying?
We wouldn't possess it, we wouldn't buy it. We would rezone it, and then it would be up to those property owners if they feel I could make more money if I put in residential units versus the business I have right now. So on the town side, we are not going to possess anybody's houses or businesses. It is our only tool we have, especially under this MBTA communities thing, is a rezone, and then it's up to individual property owners. We may not want Quirk to leave, you know, there are businesses in there. So again, that's why I'm saying, this isn't the choice.
And then one other thing,
Yep.
what's the ramification for the town if we're not in compliance with the law or whatever? What are,
So
is there a penalty?
the 3 grants, we would not be able to go
Which
for
we're
those
not
3
getting
grants.
anyway now.
We have been told that they could possibly sue us. And I wouldn't be surprised because these are guidelines. So back to an earlier comment, I showed you the law. They have guidelines and they have guidelines for the compliance. In the past, I was always taught state law, state regulations, guidelines are guidelines. That's something that I think on the town side, we should investigate. I didn't see CMR on there, which is what you see on a state regulation. And the state law is very clear and very narrow. Height and then Eric, and then I'll come this way.
No, height comment. So I have some concerns with doing anything with housing if it's not truly affordable housing. Right now, what we have for our 40Bs, that is not affordable housing. Our regular town workers, school workers, people who work at Marshall's, the gas stations, they can't afford to live in these 40B places. So we're in metropolitan guidelines. Anything else we do, are we still going to have to be under those guidelines? Because they're ridiculous. This is not the city. We don't have the amenities that the city has. We are not a half a mile. We should not be considered an MBTA adjacent property, like we just town. It just doesn't make any sense, and we should not be caving to them. And I think anything we're going to rezone has to address our housing crisis. We have students that live in town that don't have housing right now. They're getting bussed in. This is not okay. We have to be sensible about what we're doing when we're rezoning anything, and asking a business owner to try to find something else to do as a business so that we can accommodate the MBTA is just ridiculous. We should not be under the gun like this, and if we're going to do anything, it has to be to actually address the housing situation. And what we've done with the 40Bs, being on the zoning board, I'm not opposed to 40Bs, but they're not affordable with the metropolitan rates, and they don't help us at all in any way. I think we need to be more sensible about what we're doing when we're rezoning anything, and it has to include actually true affordable housing for people. Just my thoughts.
Thank you. All right. And then,
I just wanted to say I want to thank Howard Conway for those comments. All right, Mr. Guimon, I've been making notes as you talk, so I'm going to see if I can.
I feel like I'm a witness.
Yeah. So here's the thing, it's been brought up, I don't want to rehash it again, but here's the thing. We've been on this for, I don't know, you've been speaking about this for about 40 minutes or so. If we don't accept the grants, we don't have to worry about it. All right, and then he said there's a
Well, I wouldn't say you wouldn't have to worry about it, but at the moment, that's what the...
All right, so we don't accept the grants, and then see what the state does. You know, you're spending all this time on it and everything, and all we have to do is not accept grants, and then see what the state does. So there's a possibility of being sued. Well, let's see what happens if that was the deal. But since we were talking about it, you said it's all locations. Everything seems to be you're choosing locations that are already high density. And you're looking to change land over and all that and everything.
Eric, could we make it clear, we did not say, my comment from the get-go is, we have not found sites that we feel comfortable with.
But you're pointing out here that you could do something.
We have 2 areas that we said possible. We are not, I did not say to the town administrator and the select board, there you go, that's what we're gonna do. I purposely did not do that.
I think I and the rest of us are doing it, but the whole thing is you're picking locations that are already a high density and on a busy roadway. It's like one person said the traffic is pretty good in Marshfield at the moment. But you did mention you have excluded areas, or I should say, well, excluded and sensitive. So what would you sensitive could be is a broad term in regards to what may be thought by the town as a sensitive area. So what is a sensitive area to what's being described here right now?
Water Resource Protection District, wetland areas. There's like 5 different. Habitat.
It's clear, it's very clear, it's the state defined it, it's not.
And that's what we took out.
Okay. So then you have, you mentioned you have excluded areas.
There's your excluded areas, as the state has provided us.
All right, well, I can't read it from here, and I don't have a piece of paper.
The presentation is already on the town website.
All right, I'll take a look at it, I appreciate
Okay.
that.
And Eric, on an
Sure.
earlier point of yours, yes, there are already existing businesses. Yes, there's already existing development. The state said, when they were presenting it to us, we're not saying you have to build these houses or units, you just have to zone for them.
Yeah, it's like a back door, get ready.
So
do
we
something, get ready
zone
to-
already developed land is one way out. Some towns pick their industrial district right next to other towns and said, here you go, state,
Here's the way I look at it.
there's our MBTA district.
It's big developers that are looking to develop bigger projects, keep the money flowing in their pocket, and that's what this is probably all driven by. We've already seen it with Madison, where they built it, and then a year later, they sold the property for a lot of money on top of what they built it for. Probably, if they ever get their hands, chance to do it in Mill Creek, it'll probably be the same thing in regards to what is being proposed here. It's probably gonna be the same thing. So all it is just, one, mass developers are probably don't live in the state, and they wanna do something, give the residents the finger, it's your problem afterwards, and then leave us, holding the bag with everything going on.
That's not the way they intend it to be built. They don't expect one big developer to build all 50 acres as one development. It's supposed to be parcel-based.
It still could be one developer at the end of the day. Or either way, it was multiple developers, we'll still be holding the bag after they sell it. And it's already been proven with Madison, and it'll probably be proven if Mill Creek gets built, hopefully not.
All right, Eric, can I come back to you?
All right, you.
I will come back to you, we
Okay.
still have time. Your turn.
Good evening, Mr. York. Could you put back the map there, that all the colors on it for me just for a second? I'm thinking that maybe you might want to just look at it from a different angle than what you're looking at it from. And what I'm understanding, because I'm close to the map here,
Yeah.
I can see it a little better, is, well, the only things that can be accepted are the white zones on the red Gatra line. Am I correct to say that?
Or villages or commercially zoned areas is what the state is suggesting for adjacent communities.
Okay, so basically we're cutting out the north half of the town because the Gatra line doesn't go that far. The white spots on the top with the Situate border are way closer to the Situate train station than it is for the Gatra line to pull you south to Hanson, Whitman, and then if you
And we go back to my original statement, if you look at, that white area is already existing homes. So I'm gonna take 50 acres of existing single-family homes and say, guess what, you're now an MBTA community.
You're just changing the zoning, you're not kicking them out. They don't have to
I
leave.
understand,
They
but
don't have to, they can sell if they wanted to.
that doesn't follow what the state has kind of recommended us to go for as, here's the steps, this is what to look at. Yes, there is some white up there. It's already developed with single-family homes. As I said, there is very little land left in town. I think we got a golf course, the other golf club can't because it was wetlands. We have a fairgrounds, but again, that has a wetland running and a cold water brook running right through it. So there isn't a lot to do, we don't have a lot of choices.
So we couldn't turn the Gatra instead of going south. I mean, if I'm taking the train, I'm going north.
I have tried repeatedly to get Gatra to give us a connection to Greenbush.
They won't do it. Foolish to go south to go to Boston.
Because Gatra says the ridership isn't there. Gatra's looked at it twice and they said the ridership isn't there.
Well, we all know that that's the closest route to Boston. We all know it. I mean, that is the closest route. It goes straight up. Gas, save energy, we're all talking about green, but we're gonna go 30 minutes out of. But that's the reason why they chose not to move on it and to do this, is because it doesn't make sense. We all know that. So that's why we're trying to talk about
Have this discussion.
Yeah.
Because we don't have an answer.
Just, if I may, just, if you go on the website, we have the letter up, I sent the letter is a private nonprofit law firm that's, looking to take legal action against towns like Marshfield, Middleborough, and the others. So I have a copy of the letter. If you go to our town website, you see the letter, pretty comprehensive of why we think, it really talks about, we looked at it from an affordability standpoint, about creating affordable housing, very similar to Ms. Conway's points about, we have to have affordable housing that's truly affordable, not just these big developments. And we told that law firm, and then I put it up on the website so residents can see it, and hopefully the state will see it. We've been doing our part. They need to be looking at other cities and towns that aren't doing their part. You read the letter, I won't read the whole letter, but if you go on the website tomorrow or tonight when you go home, if you're bored and want some late night reading before bed, you can read this letter.
What's the website? What's the website?
Town's website?
Oh, just the town website?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say something really quick. Lincoln, select board member. So it was really interesting to listen to our new governor speak. I had an opportunity at our conference, and Michael was there, and there were some other members of our town government that were attending. But the flavor of most of it was housing. So I think that things are really hot right now on that particular topic. And it's almost like, and I agree, and I don't know how you're doing this job, because this is, as you can all see, he's very passionate about it. I said, I'm gonna have a mom's bar so I don't get hangry and all, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's really important, because when you do one thing, there's a counterbalance, so the WRPD is a real challenge for us. The grandfathering, I don't know how that could possibly work. Heights of buildings, all the other things that go into play to make that zoning change it's very complicated. So you said December 2014?
2024, December 31st, 2024.
So
We got 3 town meetings?
Yeah, I know. So if I was to put you on the spot and say, what is your biggest challenge? And what is, because you
Not retire.
No, you can't.
No.
Right? No, you can't. Is the biggest challenge understanding what the community wants? Understanding what the state, what is it, or is that too cut and dry? Coming from me in front of everybody.
So the state language has tied us in knots a few times.
Yeah.
We will continue working on it. We will figure that out. Can we figure out a site? I'm not sure, because we're gonna have to pick a location or a couple locations, and those people are not gonna be happy about it. Bottom line, no matter where in town we put this, if we are to go forward. If the town wants to fight it, that's a political decision. If it comes down to on the zoning side, we will come up with an area and we will try to do the best we could to mitigate whatever we're doing and to try to make it as less onerous or whatever, and as best for, as I've said in previous ZBA meetings, the way I look at the developments, especially the 40Bs, is I live next to it, I'm a town resident, or I'm living in it. Those are my 3 views when I review a housing development. And if you fail at living in it, what is the point? If you cannot have housing that people actually feel comfortable in and want to stay in, all we're doing is producing units. And that is a concern.
Thank you.
All right. We'll go with you first, and then back to you.
Sure, Scott Swain. I'm just wondering, how many other adjacent towns, the MBTA like us, are dealing with the similar issues? Have you reached out
Most
to
of them?
And my second question is, have you thought about bringing our representatives in and putting pressure on them to deal with the other adjacent towns, kind of reduce the number of units or whatever you can do about that?
So there are 4 communities left out of, there was 7. I think there's 4 now, that have not submitted the compliance, the action plan. We are one of those communities. That could have been a very easy process. I could have just said, here we go. Yes, we're gonna have public hearings. Yes, we're gonna go to town meeting, and guess what? We're now in compliance. The problem is that 2024 date, when the towns actually have to rezone, that's when we'll really find out where we are on all this and how happy communities are. There are a lot of changes in that MBTA communities by guidelines and stuff. Please take a look at them. I could talk another hour on all the different things that are in there. One of the things, they want us to make accessory apartments by right. We're doing that. So we are not saying, no, we're not going to do anything. We are trying to do things that we can do, and we want to have public discussion to help our select board and our town administrator figure out what else we should be doing.
One follow-up question. How would you find out how many people actually take the Gatra down to Kingston?
He can tell you, because he does that exact thing.
P&B used to go to Braintree.
Greg rides the bus and jots down the numbers of all the different people that are on there.
We do send out one, I think, last year or this year, a student at Beverly at the cost of $100,000 to go to school out there. So I'm just wondering,
so
how can you take, like, how much does it cost to bring so many people down there? Would it be viable that you just get a bus from Marshfield and send them down?
We do not have, I will get more ridership numbers. They haven't done ridership numbers since COVID or pre-COVID. But there were not a lot of people going from Marshfield all the way down to Kingston. My middle child did it once from the high school. And she said, please come and pick us up. It took 54 minutes to get here. Most riders in Marshfield are in that corridor, and they're either going to the Stop and Shop, Roach Brothers, or...
That's what I mean, I don't understand, like, is it...
The 3 supermarkets.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, that's it. Sometimes people go to the library, whatever. They don't even take that regular bus route to get to the senior center. They have their own shuttle. So, I mean, that's something, we come over to the... I am continuing to push Gatra on looking at changes to our route. Situate just got rid of their sloop, which was a fixed route. We were originally hoping to connect to the sloop, which stopped at Greenbush. So potentially you could have gone from, say, Marshfield Center to Greenbush, transferred onto the sloop bus, and get over to the harbor, Situate Harbor. But they no longer do that on a fixed route. It's now an on-demand service. We may eventually go to an on-demand service here, unless the ridership numbers start coming back up, because the ridership is still pretty low. You're going to be number 3, Joe.
Joe Pasevich, lots of questions. I'll try to make it quick. First real tiny thing, the new loop that goes up behind Roach Brothers you're talking about, is that going to cut out the Plain Street portion of the Gatra route?
The portion in between the 2 traffic signals.
Right, so that's going to be cut out. And that's just going to be replaced. The next thing is
Which is walking distance from either signal. Everything's within that walking distance that Gatra looks at for buses. So they were okay with that small section on Plain Street that they were cutting.
Right, now how does this rezoning process, this forced rezoning process work? It requires a town meeting vote.
It does.
What's the percentage to pass it? Is it a 2/3 or?
It is not 2/3. The MBTA communities changed town meeting requirement. It's a 50%, a simple majority now can change zoning for housing. Which is, everything else on zoning is still 2/3.
Yeah. Okay, now you talk about them working on the guidelines. Maybe the MAPC representative or someone can know.
He's MAPC, he's not, don't beat him up.
No, I'm not trying to. I want to know if there's any hope for having an influence on the guideline development or amendments. How does that work?
There are still conversations going on. We've been taking feedback from the municipalities that are in the region, and we're in active communication with the HCD weekly. So there's still discussion. I don't know how likely it is that there will be changes, but there has been movement from where they started to where we are today.
So your contact with regards to those guidelines is DHCD?
Yes, DHCD is the state body which
Right.
is forming those guidelines. We've been working more as an interface between our municipalities and DHCD.
Yeah, well, there's talk about the threat of being sued by some group, whether it's nonprofit or some kind of advocacy group. What we should be doing is threatening to sue them and uniting with other towns and municipalities that are under this threat, and we should then sue them. I'm tired of hearing people say, I'm not against 40B, all right? We should all be against 40B and things like this. Because 40B, the statute, is the problem, like we're dealing with up behind Roach Brothers now. It's just always been the problem. But people try to make it into a racial issue or equity issue or something like that. The law itself is flawed, and this is in the same category. We should be uniting together to say, nope, we're going to use our muscle and our money to fight this.
Your earlier point, that's why, as Josh said, DHCD, I put /DHCD, because DHCD is actually the people. MBTA isn't saying you got to rezone.
Right.
They're using the MBTA region as, here's the area that we want housing to be.
Oh, it's terrible, because DHCD is a quasi-public organization. They have no open records requirements. They don't have to meet any of those things. They operate basically the way they want. I mean, this is evil stuff. You gotta fight them. Sorry.
Okay, Eric. And then Jeremy.
You know, I do agree with you, Mr. Emo, in regards to them taking money away from the housing authority. They're picking on people that need it. And this just shows their true feelings and agenda in regards to what they want to do. I know you answered my law regulation part earlier, and I won't go through that. The bus connection, you know, you talk about running the bus, and it's something I was for in the past, we got to run it up to Situate, but now that we're going through this whole MBTA, DHCD communities thing, I'm afraid that if we try to run that bus route up there, we are going to be sucked into this whole thing in regards to be saying that we are connected to it. But, and the whole thing is that if they start using like the GATRA transportation, then I would just say get rid of GATRA, period. I think it costs a couple $100,000 a year anyways to taxpayers. And you said it's minimal ridership on it, so.
The money just goes back to MBTA then.
What's that?
The money would just go back to MBTA then.
What do you mean?
It is.
So, Mr. Kelly, when we made the change, I was actually a selectman, and we were paying $177,000 a year back in 2005 to 6. And we were getting no services. I mean, we had the bus. I don't know if anyone took the Plymouth to Brockton bus. There were 3 stops in the morning. Here, you went to Boston, Haymarket, they dropped you off, 3 stops, 3 different times, and it came back. Over the years, we provided, we provided a spot for them to drop people. Even up 5 or 6 years ago, we had a parking lot, a free parking lot. The Verrocki's provided spots for it in their place. We had it next to the Boys and Girls Club, and they finally did away with it. But there was a transportation change in 2005 or 6, which allowed you to take the money that you paid the MBTA, because we're a feeder community. We don't have a train station here. We had the P&B bus, but not a lot of people really used it. So we were able to then channel that money into GATRA. I think it's the Greater Attleboro Regional Transit. And they provided bus service for minimal amount of money. But it gave, because one of the things that's hard, if you don't drive in Marshfield, or if you can't afford a car, there's no way to get around. We're a huge town. And there was no, we're not a city, so we don't have buses. So GATRA really provided, as small as it is, a transportation opportunity. And we were really getting something for the money that we were spending.
And also the fixed route ridership has been low, especially in the last couple of years. But there is a on-demand service that goes with fixed routes, which is why I said that simple change costs $40,000 because of the dial-a-ride requirements that GATRA has to follow, which is, I don't know if it's a half mile or whatever, but it's a buffer around that route, that if I live in that area, I can call GATRA and say, next Tuesday, I need to go to my doctor's office or something, and GATRA is supposed to provide service to you. So it's not just the bus that drives around.
But like you, all right, so let's put it this way. Like you said, you could, something you said you can go to a on-demand service. Would I talked about that? Maybe something like that. I don't know what the financials are and everything, but as I said, a little concerned changing the route to Situate because that could tie us in a bad way in this whole perspective.
Well, we're already in the box.
We're not in the box. We don't take the money right now. We don't have to worry about it. You know, you brought up saying that we're in a housing crisis. In the question of affordable housing. You know, the only reason we're in a housing crisis is because the state keeps accepting people and then putting the burden on us. And then putting the burden on us and not controlling what's going on in this state, and that's the problem right here. And the whole thing is that, do we really have a housing crisis, or are they just saying that so just to keep expanding on the basis of those who have the politicians' wallets and developers and all that? I'd say the real crisis is that the people that are up at the State House, they're the crisis to us citizens in the state, and that probably needs to be changed overall. Affordable housing, like Ms. Conway said, and you can look at what we're dealing with the cost of rent and everything like that. It's not affordable to anybody. And I don't think anybody here is against affordable housing, actual affordable housing. But 40B is not affordable housing. You know, putting in a small starter home somewhere for somebody so they can get their feet grounded and establish themselves, probably something that would be beneficial to the town and the people that live there, instead of building monstrosity of projects and listen to the state or some state agency trying to cram something down our throat. Like Joe said, fight them tooth and nail if you have to. Let's, you know, if they want to bring it on, let's go at it.
Jeremy?
I think this is one of those issues that you're going to find broad agreement that state law does not meet our town's needs. And we would also, from the chamber perspective, encourage you to continue to fight the state on this. MAPC's done some great teach-ins, and there's been some changes over time in how the legislation's been applied. It's softened a bit, and let's see how this plays out through 2024. Good luck with the fight. I think Heidi makes a very strong argument that we need to have a deeper, longer conversation about our housing stock and affordability and how we approach that problem. We've spent 45 minutes of an economic development meeting talking about housing. So maybe have an expanded conversation around housing, but I think we may need to have another meeting about...
That's another chapter in the master plan.
I think perhaps we need to have another meeting about economic development because we spent very little time talking about what the future might hold for the B1 and the PUMD.
And as I said at the beginning, feel free to send us the comments.
Cool.
We're not going anywhere. Josh is still with us for a while to wrap up on this section of the master plan.
Really appreciate all your work.
Okay. We are at about 7 after. Are you guys good, or do you have a few more comments?
I just have a question. Okay. So, are there any plans with the select board or anything to address the affordable housing? You know, find these lots that are out there and do starter homes. Is there any way the town can do, you know, partial funding or you know, help these people to get their foot in, and instead of the high rises, as we call high rise, you know, to help these people and do true affordable housing.
So the town is looking at, and we did purchase some land for both open space and affordable housing. The hard part of it is the cost of building that housing is very expensive. We do have money that comes in from some developments that don't have the affordability. They give us some money towards that. A lot of that money was used for the veterans housing, most recently. We are going to continue on the planning board side. We're going to continue when we're looking at lots in the future. Can we do open space and affordable housing for purchases to get more land available to do on the town side? What you really need is a developer working with the town to get that. If we're supplying the land, the developer's supplying some of the effort, we get that cost down a little lower. The biggest problem is the developers are not building Levittowns anymore. They're not building starter homes. They're building monster homes. That's all they want to build because that's where they get the most money. And that's part of the problem. And I've said this repeatedly to housing advocates. Zoning isn't the only problem. We have multiple other problems, and the market itself is part of the problem. Because if I'm a developer, I want 600,000, 800,000, or $1 million. I don't want to provide a $300,000, home.
Is there a vocational school around here? I know in Weymouth, they used to build at least one house a year.
Well, we were doing habitats. We've done a lot of habitats.
Yeah.
We have purchased existing homes, and the town has subsidized them and then put a deed restriction on it. That was 27 homes that we've done under that process. So the town has been trying to do, but we're not going to get thousands of units that way. At best, we're going to get 5, 10, 15, type of thing, unless we decide we want to convert a big chunk of town land and say, all right, we're going to make this an affordable thing, we're going to put out an RFP, we're going to want this type of housing, we're going to want it at this price range and stuff, and then we have to see, can we get a developer to come in and say, okay, I'll do it.
I just want to follow up on what Greg said. So, ideally, anyone that's looking for affordable housing, they don't go to bed at night wishing that they could have an apartment. Most people go to bed wishing they could afford a house to raise their family in. The problem is, Greg did a nice job of showing you how difficult it is to create, how slow it is. That's the problem with the state. We've been fighting for years with the state to get them to change, to count different things towards the 10%. It's very difficult because it's so hard to create those units. The planning board, the Marshfield Housing Partnership, and we got the support of the select board over the last half a dozen years. As we buy open space and there's housing there, we have the option of developing the house that's on the land that we want into an affordable unit. But the cost is very expensive. Anyone that builds a home and does home repairs, there's no subsidies for those single homes. And like Greg said, we would have to rely on a developer. If we wanted to build our own affordable, friendly 40B, we could do that, but the incentives are not there from the state. So the state, and this law was created in 1969 to build affordable housing. The legislature has looked at it over those years, and just recently, half a dozen years ago, to try to make some tinkering with it. And the state said no, because there's really no other way, and it's only like 10% of the actual units. So we get like, 287 units, but only 27 are truly affordable. The others are very expensive. So it's a very difficult and challenging process.
All right, ma'am, then Diane, then her.
Just so
And then we're gonna wrap up, so.
I'm a little confused. So we do have enough multifamily housing. It's just dispersed and not located within a 50-acre site? Because didn't you say 50% of us?
The state for adjacent communities, they're looking for that adjacent communities to have 10% of their housing stock multifamily attached.
And we have
We have in surplus of 10%
Yeah.
already because of those 600 to 700 apartments that we built in 69, right along 139. We got some others down heading towards the airport. We got, those buildings. We got the ones right next to the library. There are apartments, a lot of apartments and condos, well, they're all condos now, I think, in town. So we do have that already. Some other communities don't, and that's, again, one difference. There's nothing in their guidelines that say, okay, you get credit because you've done that. They say you gotta produce 1,158 more multifamily units. Diane?
So if you dropped the GATRA roof, that would lower the percentage that you're supposed to have, right? Because if you didn't have the GATRA roof, we wouldn't be,
No, dropping the GATRA roof really doesn't help us.
doesn't that make us a, adjacent community?
We are an adjacent community.
Even without
To
the.
Situate,
But
to the Greenbush.
Because we're next to Situate, we're an adjacent community. GATRA has nothing to do with that. They have said, oh, well, you have a GATRA bus, and it goes all the way down to the Kingston Collection. I missed them all.
And how much would it lower the percentage if you did purchase that land? Just like you were talking about
Oh.
at the beginning.
So when we're purchasing it land, one of the things that we do, in the past, we were always reluctant to purchase wetland. If we purchase the wetland counts. It also counts towards our flood insurance. So it gives you a double benefit. So we don't have to just go out and purchase upland. We can continue purchasing wetland. We can also start looking at tax title, people who haven't paid their taxes, a lot of those are wetlands and stuff. Take those through the process and add that to our GLAM, which is to get to that 1.5. When we get to that 1.5, then the 40B part of it is addressed. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't stop. We could look for a town-friendly 40B to try to get to the affordable part of things.
But that's a different rule than the
Than
United
this.
States communities. That wouldn't remove us from
this one.
And then my third thing was, have you ever thought about manufactured housing? Like, I don't know if I built a house, but. Yeah, like those.
Modular?
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you ever thought about making like a?
Again, that's not the town per se. We do not prohibit it. There was a house built 3 houses away from me, and they had a sign out for a long time that said, "House in a day." It actually took about a week for the 4 parts to come in, and they put it all together and stuff, and then it was a house. But yes, we do not say no to modular. But it would be the builder that would decide, or the town in its RFP, if we were to work with a developer, we could say, we would like you to look into modular because we think it's a little less expensive than stick with. We could really shock people and say, why don't we put out an RFP for container housing?
Do it.
Please, no.
So Frank, how many acres is it to get to the 1.5?
Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't.
Okay. We know the number, we'll get the number.
Okay.
But like I said, we're about 1.1, we're supposed to be 1.5.
Greg, if I could say one thing, you mentioned it earlier, I think Joe mentioned it and Eric did too, and I think it's kind of an important part now that you have a bunch of residents that understand how this specifically affects Marshfield being an adjacent community, not being an MBTA community. You understand how those regulations negatively affect us, or those guidelines negatively affect us, right? Put some pressure on the lawmakers, lobby the DACD, and try to not just rely on, our, interims to help us put that pressure, but you've got some education now. Make a phone call, send an email, help lobby us a little, to put some pressure on it.
Thanks. And final point, because it came to me, Eric, we're done. I'm gonna
No,
say one
wait,
last
wait,
thing.
I was the next
Done.
one.
Eric, how many times have we gone to you tonight?
Call on the phone.
Jeremy, yes,
What's
we've
wrong with the
spent a
fourth
lot of time on MBTA communities tonight. It was an economic development section, but you can see why this is so important to our economic development. It's our commercial areas that are parts of what we're supposed to be looking at to meet this guideline.
Fully recognize it, thank you.
So that's why. All right, thanks, everybody. All right.